All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute or unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Obviously, if you're in the room, just raise your hand. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. Please raise your hand on Zoom via Zoom if you would like to use an AI note taker during this meeting. If you are on the phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9.
Next slide. Do the roll call first.
No.
Okay, great. All right. Welcome, everyone. Are we doing the roll call first, David? Yes. Okay. We could do that, please.
It's on my agenda.
Sorry.
Call the roll, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll call on MassDOT Seat 1.
This is David Moeller. I'm here.
MassDOT Seat 2.
That is
Either me or Jonathan.
here.
John Bouchard here too.
MassDOT. MassDOT Highway Division.
John Romano, MassDOT Highway here.
MBTA.
Lindsay Heffernan, MBTA.
Regional Transportation Authority's Metro West Transit Authority.
Jim Nee here.
Massport.
Sarah Lee, here.
MAPC.
Lizzie Wyant, here.
MBTA Advisory Board.
Brian Kane, present.
Advisory Council.
Caitlin Allen Conley, present.
City of Boston Seat 1.
Pyra Shen here.
City of Boston Seat 2.
Nick Gove here.
At-large city, City of Everett. At-large city, City of Newton.
Ned Codd here.
Thank you. At-large town, Town of Arlington.
Leonard Diggins here.
James
Welcome.
Feeney here.
At-large town, Town of Brookline.
Erin Chute, Town of Brookline, here.
Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Tatiana Ballantyne, here.
Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Lexington.
Megan Roach, representing Select Board Chair Jill Hay for the Magic Subregion.
Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giannibetti, representing Metro West and Mayor Charles Ziski, Framingham.
North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Mike Cahill here.
North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington.
Melissa Tentopoulos, North Suburban Planning Council.
South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
Chris Diorio, representing Hull Select Board Chair Erwin Nessoff.
Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham.
Rachel Benson, representing Southwest Advisory Planning Committee and Town of Rentham.
Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Tom O'Rourke, Town of Norwood, representing Trick. Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
Steve.
Not a problem.
Oh.
Welcome.
The alternate is Steve Olenoff, the alternate, sitting at the table here. Tom will be the one voting.
And the Federal Highway Administration.
Joy Singh, Federal Highway Administration, here.
Welcome. That calls to a roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to the first item on the agenda. Welcome remarks from Executive Director Tegan Tyke.
Thank you. Very excited now to be able to welcome you all. My name is Tegan Tyke. I am the Executive Director of the staff to the Boston Region MPO. So in that role, I have the pleasure of welcoming everybody at the table here and in the audience, and also setting the stage for why we are here together. So just very brief context. The Metropolitan Planning Organizations, or MPOs, are multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional governing bodies and the supporting staff who make decisions about how to allocate federal transportation dollars in a region. In the Boston region of 97 cities and towns, your work enables about $8 billion of capital funding inclusive of a state and local match, to flow into our region over a 5-year period for capital projects. And then while most of that funding is channeled through Mass DOT, MBTA, and Regional Transit Authority selection processes, this board still reviews and approves those uses of the funds and has a role in directly soliciting, scoring, and selecting projects for about $150 million of capital funding in a single year. Your work also enables about $8 million of planning funds to come into the region to do the required federal planning process and more. But part of the required process is developing a long-range vision for transportation in our region. And it is with that as the framework that you all go through the process each year to select those projects for your regional target funding program. And the key to that is that by applying your own criteria and goals set with that is that you all select projects that you know are what our residents in our region need to thrive. And as always, you do this with a lens of taking into account those who in the past were negatively impacted by the building of our highway and roadway systems. So the stewardship that you all play here today at this table is really significant, not only in scale. You are also the 14th largest MPO by population in the country out of about 450 MPOs. But it's also significant in the context of some of the fiscal and political uncertainty that we've all been working with and facing over the last year. So later in the meeting, I'll have a few minutes to spend to talk about how we've still been able to be successful in persevering and expanding our practice over this past year. But for now, for this welcome, I just want to invite you all to take pride and also understand the importance of the work that you all do in this room together, be it you or your designees. You spend many, many hours over the years deliberating, discussing, and making informed decisions about how to invest dollars in a way that benefits our region. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time and commitment, and we'll move it on.
Thank you, Tegan. Next on the agenda is remarks from Secretary Fielding. It's my pleasure to invite the Secretary to speak.
Well, thank you, David. And I want to thank everyone here because I know that this meeting was scheduled for a different date, and everyone during this busy time accommodated my request to move this so I can attend in person. So thank you to all of you. I want to acknowledge Mayor Ballantyne, Mayor Cahill. Thank you for being here. Working with municipalities and the leaders of those municipalities is truly not only an honor, but it's what this MPO also represents. Tegan talked about what the MPO and the long-range vision, and while each of us have different geographic boundaries on a map, and while each of us may have different agency goals and priorities, at the end of the day, we all serve a common goal, and that's how do we deliver collectively, a robust transportation network, improving quality of life for everyone, supporting all the things that we know is so important to everyone. Affordability, housing, jobs, economy, businesses. And that's why this MPO is so vital to everything and to all of us. And collectively, we are strong, and collectively we can deliver. And Tegan mentioned a little bit about available dollars. How do we deliver with that? And I know, having been in public service for 40 years, there are always good times where it seems like how do you accelerate projects? There's times where you have to cut back and make wise and tough decisions. But there's never a time where our roles together are not important, right? There is never a time for us to let off of the pedal and exhale. We really always have to keep pushing forward. And one of the things I'd love to be able to, as we continue to go forward, is not only how do we talk about the long-range vision, but I know all of you are very also focused on how do we deliver that vision, and how do we maybe even deliver that vision sooner? How do we accelerate projects, and how do we work, across federal levels, state levels, local levels, to make the precious taxpayer dollars that we do receive to actually come out with meaningful results and projects. Some of the things that I remember, if it's okay for me to delve back into some prior examples. I remember when I first started back in the New York State Department of Transportation. And Joy, I apologize because I think you heard some of this just the other day. There was a major project that I was involved in. It was on the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, and it was the Kosciuszko Bridge that connects Brooklyn and Queens, 1.1 mile section of the BQE, over 200,000 cars and trucks every day use that corridor. That structure was at the end of its useful life, had a lot of structural issues, and the agency had to make decisions on rehabilitation in place or some form of reconstruction or full replacement. And I'm proud to say back then, I remember in 2002 when we started the environmental process, the agency was so proud that we finished it, got a record of decision in 2009. 7 years was the national average for EISs. Fast forward or move ahead. I had the pleasure of being involved in the Tappan Zee Bridge project. And that project in 2012, September, had the record of decision. And that was one where it had been discussed for a long time, many years of studies. But when the decision was made to move forward with that project, that EIS was done in 11 months. And I remember so many folks not believing that we could accelerate that project. And not only did the record of decision get completed in September of 2012, accelerating the work, the procurement process for the design build mega billion-dollar project was being done in parallel with that environmental process. And that job was awarded in January of 2013, just 4 months after the record of decision. So those are the kinds of things that I want to be able to talk about as we go forward with critical projects, not just mega projects, but smaller projects as well. If I take example, then best practices, and that's why these meetings are important as well. How do we share that with one another? Those examples of those were utilized somewhere in the future back in 2016 when New York State Long Island Railroad decided to move forward with what they called the Long Island Railroad Third Track Project. It was a 10-mile section of their mainline corridor of Long Island Railroad to add a third track along communities that for 50 years had said no, never going to happen, not in our backyard. Through a very robust community process, engagement, going in and talking about how traffic management could be, how impacts can be, no property takings. In 2016, it was announced. 2018, the record of decision was complete. And several months later, that project was awarded. And 4 years after that, the $2.6 billion project was completed on budget, as well as eliminating 8 at-grade crossings, 7 structures that needed to be elevated because they were frequently hit, and adding a third track when 290 trains were running through that work zone every day. So big things can happen, and I just want us to continue to think about those kinds of opportunities going forward. And I really look together that it's an exciting time for me to be part of this. It's an exciting time for us because there are so many other needs going on that any acceleration, any delivery of results, I think it makes it easier to invest in what we need when we ask for more dollars. And I also think it shows that public agencies can deliver, and there's nothing better than public confidence when you can follow through with commitments. And that's through open dialogue. That's through us talking through challenges, because every one of us have different roles and responsibilities. But at the end of the day, when we can work through them, that's how we deliver those meaningful projects for folks. The last part, I just want to say I've been privileged to be serving the Commonwealth for the last 2.5 years as a T general manager. And now my ability to, also be interim secretary and be in both roles is similar to what the MPO represents, right? It's collaboration. It's bringing agencies together. And I really look forward to that piece. But I also look forward to working with each and every one of you, not only through the MPO process, but through individual projects, through any individual needs, but collectively to all of our successes. So I think with that, I just want to say thank you again. And let's keep the meeting moving.
Thank you, Secretary, very much. Now we're going to have remarks from board members, and we're going to start with Undersecretary and Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
All right, thank you, David. I'm going to build a little bit off of what Phil was just talking about. First and foremost, thank you all for the work that you do here at the MPO to keep these important projects moving forward. I'm myself a longtime municipal official. It's one of these things that I can't quit on a local board, but they keep electing me to it, so I keep going. But it's I know firsthand from that experience the challenges that you deal with each and every day, trying to balance the multiple needs that you have in your local community. communities and how difficult it is to make sure that you keep things moving. So I appreciate that you take your time to come and participate in this body to really keep the transportation parts of things moving through your communities and through the whole region. It's something that's crucially important, and it's something that certainly we at MassDOT are very grateful for your service here. I'm gonna kind of give you Phil certainly said a lot about where we want to be, and I want to echo some of that really continuing to find ways to move projects forward faster, deliver those services to you as quickly as possible is something that we both want. It's a mutual goal, but it's also something that we have mutually been working on, and we hear you. And we've been making some changes pretty steadily over the last few years on a number of programs. There's still certainly a lot more work to do, but we're looking forward to you on finding ways to working with you on finding ways to accelerate those things. I'm just going to name a couple of them real quick. First and foremost, you may have seen recently, Grant Central 2.0 was just launched. If you're a community that works with us on any of our multiple grant programs, that's a really important update for us. It puts all of those grants into one place. It allows communities to go in there and find what they need to get their jobs done, whatever it may be. A couple of big changes that we made this year. The first is that we've adopted a one-stop grant program system. That means that you don't have to know up front what you're applying for. You come in with a project scope. Our team works behind the scenes to identify where those available grant programs are. This is similar to some things like MassWorks have had in place for a long time, but there's a big new development for us that allows things to really be streamlined, and it really does help out, especially those communities that may not have a robust planning or engineering department, so that they can really get those programs launched quickly. And as always, we have a lot of technical staff available to work with those communities to make sure that they're putting in the best application they can. We are also increasing our grant limits on a number of key programs, and Small Bridge is a good example of it. Small Bridge has been at 500,000 now for years. We're increasing that to $1 million. It's been clear over the last few years that it has not kept pace with inflation. This is a good adjustment so that we can get those small bridges now have big price tags on them, and now you can get them done under that program. Couple of other things that are worth knowing about it. We opened up applications just now for our first tranche of this year. That'll be open until January 9th, with awards anticipated sometime in the first quarter of 2026. So if your community has a project that you want to get underway, please check that out. Have your staff check that out and see if there's something in there that you think would be applicable. And if there's something you need more information on, please call us. I also want to talk about some of the other things that we're doing to help out municipalities. So the governor this year really worked hard with the legislature to pass the new Chapter 90 bill. That has had major impacts for communities all across the Commonwealth. So the couple of big things that it does, first, it now increased to $300 million instead of what has been $200 million now for about a decade. That extra $100 million, the second piece that happens here is that it's not following the regular formula. It's now exclusively looking at road miles. That's how that second tranche of the $100 million is being distributed. That's especially important for a number of communities across the state, but especially in some of the rural areas where they have a lot of road mileage, but not necessarily a lot of industry. And this really helps them out. That gives them an influx of cash. In some case, it increases their budget for Chapter 90 by more than 50%. So that was a huge improvement that we worked with many of you on. That was feedback that we received from you through our Chapter 90 commission that we put together, and we put that right into action. And that's again a huge benefit, I think, for everybody in this room, and especially for those communities that have those high road miles, but not necessarily the business. Couple other things just worth noting. The bill also added some new programs, $500 million for pavement and bridge upgrades, $200 million to replace culverts and small bridges. That's part of our grant portfolio now. $185 million to ease congestion and improve safety. Those are targeted projects that our team has been identifying that'll reduce things like bottlenecks and safety hotspots and really work with the communities that those locations are in to try to correct those. Couple other things worth noting that we got done this year. It was mentioned earlier, our capital program. we have been incredibly fortunate to have a period of support from Congress, from our local legislature, and from the governor's office. And that's crucial because it's allowed us to put the much needed investment into our roads and bridges across the state that has been desperately needed. We had as many of you who have been around for some time know, we had the Accelerated Bridge Program now almost 15 years ago when that one started. That was a good influx of bridge money, but it wasn't enough to keep things steady. Just in this last couple of years, between the increases coming out of Washington, matched by the increases from the legislature, and along with that fair share, we are finally really moving the needle on some of our biggest needs, like bridges. And in this next 5-year program, to give you a sense of where we're going with things, we right now, this past year, have $6 billion under contract in construction. That's a big number for us. That's up from $4 billion just a couple of years ago. So it's been growing leaps and bounds. If you ignore the mega projects, that number by itself, just over the next 24 months, is going to grow to $8 billion. So that's the kind of investment that we're seeing. You include the mega projects in there with the Sagamore Bridge. That's a $10 billion investment, $10 billion. So almost growth of about $4 to $5 billion over that 5-year period. That's huge. And it's incredibly important when you look at what that does for us as a Commonwealth. For every $1 billion that is invested into transportation infrastructure, it supports 13,000 jobs. Those are US DOT statistics. Those are not something that we're making up. That's real data. That's a lot of jobs that are being supported by our program. And in a couple of years, that means that's about 130,000 jobs that are both directly and indirectly supported just by the program that this body has helped us put out. And that's an incredibly important accomplishment. It's an incredibly important statistic to keep in your back pocket too, because I'll end with this. We are in a crucial year when it comes to Congress. For a lot of reasons, Congress has its up and downs this year, as everybody knows. One of the things that's important to us in transportation is that this is the year that our funding runs out, where we have the BIL that was passed by the Biden administration. It's in its last year in 2026. The Congress needs to take up reauthorization, and I don't miss an opportunity to talk to anybody to make sure that everybody has awareness around that. That's something that you need to talk to your elected officials. If you're a business and you have lobbyists, talk to them. It's something that's going to be really important to really look at the numbers that we have right now and make sure that Congress knows that number needs to be the floor, not the ceiling. We still have way more investments that are needed, and we want to make sure that we maintain the momentum that we already have. So that's something that's really important that's coming up this year that is worth it for everybody in this room to pay attention to. And I will also say this, unlike a lot of other states, we are very fortunate to have an incredibly supportive federal delegation. They understand this stuff. Some of the organizations that we're involved in, they literally have classes for DOTs about how to speak to your congressman so that they know that transportation is important. That's something that thankfully we don't have a problem with. Our delegation really understands this stuff. They continue to support us. They continue to show up, and they continue to really work to make sure that we get the levels of investment that we need. And but it's important for all of us to support them and make sure that we continue to get that investment going forward. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator. Consistent with our standard practice, I'd like to give the mayors a chance to speak now. Mayor Cahill, would you like to make any remarks?
Thank you, David. Quickly, I just want to say if you participate regularly in these meetings, you usually see my planning director. She's in the room, Darlene Wynn. I want to thank her for her great work. I want to thank everybody who's involved in any way with the MPO, because as you know better than, well, we all know how critically important the work is. It helps from the neighborhood and local level through smaller subregions and this greater region. And I think the secretary said it best when he talked about how this is all wrapped up in economic development. It ties together, transportation ties together access to healthcare and access to higher education, workforce training, jobs. It's everything to us. So I'm grateful for the work that everyone here does throughout the year. I'm very appreciative that we get to sit here representing the North Shore communities as we look to try to meet our sub-regional needs with the whole. So thanks, everybody, for all you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Valentine?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. And for those of you who don't know, I serve on the board representing not only Somerville, but the 20 other cities and towns that make up the inner core. Our communities are deeply connected, and Somerville takes real pride in its relationships that we've built with our neighboring municipalities, with MassDOT and with the MBTA. So when I reflect back on 2025, I want to give praise to you all and thank you all for the productive and collaborative year that we've had. Like you in Somerville, we've been navigating unprecedented pressure on both our capital and operating budgets. We've had the most difficult choices about how to prioritize limited resources. We've strengthened coordination across departments and with our partners to keep projects moving despite shifting federal guidance. And we focused on supporting our staff because without skilled and motivated workforce, none of our progress is possible. Well, I've seen the same evolution happening across MassDOT and the MBTA this year, and I want to recognize GM Eng and Interim Secretary, I guess is the title, Eng, and Administrator Gulliver and your teams for the work that you've been doing. I also want to commend the MPO for truly meeting the moment under Tegan's leadership. You know, if I can just highlight a few things for us. This year, you've created an innovative design pilot program that helps smaller communities take on those risky early phases of project development. You've launched a transit transformation program that supports both MBTA and our RTAs. You've crafted the nation's first regional Vision Zero action plan, and you've adopted new costs and readiness policies that will help us all manage cash flow and more responsibly in our turbulent times. So your work shows what it looks like when public agencies step up. So together we can build coalitions, we can steward public resources responsibly, and we can deliver the outcomes that improve daily lives. So thank you for this, and wish everybody happy holidays and a wonderful 2026.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we're going to call on our Vice Chair, Lizzie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Hello, everyone. I'm Lizzie Wyant. I am the Executive Director at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, or MAPC. I think most of you know we're the regional planning agency serving the 101 cities and towns of metropolitan Boston. I wanted to take a moment to formally introduce myself to this table. I have been at MAPC for 10 years. I served as the deputy for the last 4 years, and I originally came to the agency to run the government affairs program. My background is actually in transportation advocacy, and so I have been in this boardroom many, many times wearing a different hat. I previously served as the legislative director for transportation for Massachusetts, and it was really in that role that I learned that our transportation system, and a strong transportation system, is the backbone of all of the other things that our region really needs to thrive. Transportation is about housing, it is about clean energy, it is about the environment, it is about public health, and it is about access to our amazing arts and culture system here in Metro Boston. MAPC is very proud to serve as the fiduciary for the MPO, but more than that, I'm very excited to have the opportunity to work more closely with Tegan and her incredible team. And I'm very eager to foster good coordination on the planning work of our two agencies. As I look to the future of MAPC, I'm excited about turning us from a planning agency into a planning and implementation agency. My goal is to make our work more regional. And what I mean by that is that while we do excellent planning work at the local level, we are also charged with looking across municipal borders to address challenges and opportunities that face our whole region. So even as we are helping a particular city or town with a particular planning challenge, it's really up to us to recognize the places where cities and towns can learn from each other, can share best practices, and implement creative solutions to our common problems. One of the things I especially appreciate about working with the MPO is that both of our organizations work with this regional lens, and that is part of what makes us such strong partners. To that end, I was very happy to see the MPO recently adopt the updated project readiness policy. I'm looking forward to the panel discussion later today on this topic. And to highlight the ways that cities and towns, MassDOT, and the MPO can work together to advance our projects on schedule, share project information, and importantly, have more time to plan when project timelines shift. I want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to offer these remarks today, and I really look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Next, we're going to go to our Central City representatives. Kairos.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kairos Shen, Chief of Planning for the City of Boston. On behalf of Mayor Wu, I want to thank you, Secretary Eng, for your leadership of this MPO board and the MBTA and MassDOT. I would also like to extend my thanks to all of the members of the Boston Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization, as well as the leadership and staff for the important work that all of you do every day to ensure our continued access to federal investments. And critically, for their critical role in aligning those investments around our shared vision for an equitable transportation system that gets our residents to their destinations safely, easily, and reliably. The coordination that happens here ensures that we are delivering multimodal transportation system across the region that our constituents expect, and that also advance some of the mayor's key priorities for Boston. And they include increasing affordability by reducing transportation cost and time spent commuting, spurring economic growth and maintaining the competitive advantage of our city and our region. In particular, we're very happy that the MPO is continuing to not only fund projects that go beyond the state of good repair, that is essential, but also deliver new opportunities for transit-oriented growth across our region. And for Boston, this means building streets and neighborhood centers that are friendly for families and children. The critical work of ensuring reliability and safety is critical to maintaining the competitiveness and livability of our neighborhoods. And finally, of course, advancing sustainability and resiliency to maintain projects that maintain the long-term livability and competitiveness of our region. I want to end by just thanking the MPO's support for few of the key projects in Boston itself. The Cambridge Street Bridge project and the Rutherford Avenue project that will follow it. Together, these two projects support and connect the communities of Charlestown, Somerville, Everett, and residents north of Boston. I also want to mention that the other project of Boylston Street project in the Fenway that helps our residents of that neighborhood and those across our region who are headed to a Red Sox game and a hospital in the Longwood medical area. At a time when there are decreasing federal investment in local infrastructure, we in Boston are thankful to be part of this group and to be colleagues aligned in the challenges facing our entire region. Thank you.
Thank you, Kairos. Nick?
Thank you. Nick Gove, Interim Chief of Streets for the City of Boston. Just to echo what Kairos said, I want to thank our partner municipalities, the board, as well as the MPO staff. We're grateful to see the adoption of the Vision Zero policy, as well as the TIP readiness policy. And as Kairos mentioned, we look forward to moving Cambridge Street Bridge, Rutherford and Sullivan, as well as Boylston Street and the Fenway forward. And lastly, we look forward to working with all our regional partners next year on celebrating the nation's 250th anniversary, welcoming FIFA World Cup, as well as Sail Boston. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Next, I'd like to ask our Advisory Council Chair to speak. Caitlin?
Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. My name is Caitlin Allen Conley, and I'm the Executive Director of Transit Matters. Transit Matters and the Mystic River Watershed Association are grateful to serve as the chair and the vice chair of the MPO's Community Advisory Council. The council seeks to provide a voice for the broader community of people who are served by MPO activities. Both of our organizations are well experienced at weaving together the needs and the interest of wide-ranging constituencies. Transit Matters, a transit and people first organization, believes that transit is vital to all areas of society, from housing to social services and from employment and economic development to the environment. Really, in all areas, transit matters. As the chair and vice chair, we hope to add transparency to the MPO's process, foster healthy debate, and build consensus and provide an active voice for the 17 MPO Community Advisory Council members. There are a number of members who are here, and hopefully you've had a chance to meet them. I'd like to recognize them and thank them for their participation in the council. The MPO is truly, as I'm learning, a dynamic organization with staff who are truly committed to distributing funds equitably and efficiency to see projects come to fruition on time and on budget, to improve communities and the built environment, to better serve transportation and rider needs, both today and tomorrow. I'd like to acknowledge my vice chair, Carl Alexander, who's behind me, from the Mystic River Association, and my alternate, Will Palmer, who's also behind me, as well as the MPO staff who've been incredibly supportive on onboarding us, Sean Rourke and Jia Huang, and the former staff member, Stella Jordan, for their support. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you so much to Tegan for her support in launching and empowering the Advisory Council. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Caitlin. That concludes all the people who told me they wanted to speak. Is there any other member who would like to speak at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Brian Kane.
Well, thank you, David. Appreciate it. My name is Brian Kane. I have the great honor to serve as the executive director of the MBTA's Advisory Board, which is a regional quasi-state agency serving 178 cities and towns that make up the MBTA service district. And some of you might know for the past 2.5 years, we've been traveling to many of these member communities to hear from them what their transportation needs are. And a lot of it comes back to what you said, Secretary, in your opening remarks about the need to shorten the time from record of decision to shovels in the ground. I really appreciate what you said, and I would encourage you to continue to do it to drive down those costs, because time is money, and to drive down the time between things. And I also want to commend you, Undersecretary, for your comments on safety. We've heard a lot about safety at the T in the last, 5 years, but for some of us, 25 years. It is critical, and I applaud you, Secretary, for what you've done there. I think we as an MPO need to do much more to bring that continued thinking to the highway side. We have too many people dying on our roads. We have too many people dying on our municipal roads. And like you, Undersecretary, I also serve on my local community's transportation board because I'm a glutton for punishment. And we see it there too. We've had deaths in our community, and one is too many. So let us, in 2026, focus on safety, focus on slowing down cars, focus on saving lives, because if we truly believe in Vision Zero, our goal must be zero. To conclude, I just wanted to thank you again for being here today. I wanted to acknowledge Mayor Cahill, Mayor Ballantyne, members of the advisory board. Thank you. All the folks who are making the stuff on the screens appear and work and the microphones work. Thank you very much. And I also would be remiss if I didn't echo the many remarks praising Tegan Tyke. I serve as the MPO's Administration and Finance Committee Chair, and we have the opportunity to look at the budgets. And while the internal budget is not often discussed at the full board, I can tell you that CTPS, which Tegan runs, is a well-run shop. And I applaud you and Gina Perel, Haral, everyone at the staff who does all of the stuff behind the scenes to make CTPS work so that this board can do its job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any other members who would like to speak at this time? Seeing none, I believe we're going to skip the next item on the agenda because Caitlin already gave her report. So now we're at the public comments. No one signed up to speak, but if you would like to speak, please proceed to the podium and we will call on you.
Hey, David, can I say one more thing, which I forgot to say?
Sure, Brian, of course.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Secretary, you mentioned Kosciuszko Bridge in Queens.
Yes.
We also have a Kosciuszko transportation entity here that needs some help. So please, any attention you can get, it will be most welcome.
Kosciuszko is the window, that's the.
So seeing no public comment, if you have a comment during the meeting, please raise your hand and we will try to call on you. Next item on the agenda is the MPO progress update. Tegan Tyke.
Bear with me 1 second. All right, so different perspective. I'm hoping I'm not going to set off the microphone. Let me see if I can, I don't know. I will stand back and talk as loud as I can without causing the microphone to go off. Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for your comments and remarks that you've made at the beginning of this meeting. It is so rare that we come together in person at this table. Can anybody try to modify the mic volume? I can see people wincing. It's never the reaction we want. So turn it down. How's that? Right. Problem solving. How's that? Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. Great. So it's not that often that we all come together here at the table in person, and also some of the faces who are here today are really talking about common themes. What I will say is that I have the pleasure of capturing your time for about 10 more minutes or so. I'd love to talk a bit about how the MPO has really continued to persevere in expanding our practice together with you all and stakeholders, those that are in the room and not. And you will hear some common themes. For some of you touched upon some of the things that I'm going to talk about too, but I hope you'll bear with me. It'll be relatively succinct, but I think it's really important to celebrate all of the various ways in which this body has ensured that federal transportation investments are going into the benefits of the region. So what I'd like to do is provide some examples in 3 areas in which our practices as an MPO have been evolving over the last federal fiscal year. First, we've been building partnerships across agencies and communities to help coordinate efforts, identify common goals like we've been talking about today, and deliver results that strengthen our region. Second, the Boston Region MPO has creatively developed, we creatively apply and even create data and tools to make sure that we are providing data-driven decision-making support to our region stakeholders. And third, another topic that's come up, and we are enhancing our MPO's ability to move from planning concepts into real constructed projects / implementation, per Lizzie's remarks. So I'm going to share a few examples of what we've done in our roles as conveners, actors, and funders over the last year, starting with building partnerships. Like all MPOs, we are uniquely positioned and in fact required through federal regulations and law to bring together local, regional, and statewide perspectives informed by the public, community-based organizations, advocates, and other partners to define and implement a transportation vision for the 97 cities and towns in the Boston region. And it is only with that shared vision, as I mentioned earlier, that transportation dollars from the federal government can be invested in our region. And as the MPO, we carry out that mission with the philosophy that strong relationships and open communication and transparency are the foundation to getting things done with the impact that we intend it to have. So, for example, as Caitlin already talked to us a bit about, in federal fiscal year 2025, we did celebrate the launch of the re-envisioned and restructured advisory group to the MPO, known as the Community Advisory Council. The elected chair of this council, as Caitlin has already mentioned as well, has a voting seat on the board to ensure that perspectives that are less represented in the decision-making process have a direct voice into the deliberations of this board and the decisions that this board makes. So this newly launched council centers community-based organizations and advocates focused on a wide range of issues like transit, walking, biking, and rolling safety, housing, public health, and the environment. And this group also includes perspectives representing businesses, seniors, vulnerable road users, and municipalities. So we welcome Caitlin and the other representatives of the chair and the vice chair into the new role with the MPO board in October. And we're looking forward to working together to deepen the collaborative relationship with the rest of the board throughout the year. So in addition to working with community members, we've been continuing to enhance our partnerships with fellow transportation agencies. In particular, over the last year, our work with the region's largest public transit agency, the MBTA, has evolved based on a shared goal of advancing a more multimodal approach to regional mobility. This means that we're working on providing options for all types of travel while maintaining the MBTA and public transit as a sustainable, reliable, universally accessible backbone of a robust transportation system. So last year, for example, we partnered with the MBTA on a mobility integration study that explored how transit agencies and other mobility providers in the Boston region can work together to expand access. This work fed into the MBTA's recently published Mobility Integrations Plan. And if you have not looked at that already, I highly recommend that you do. And now we're partnering with the MBTA on the Interagency Transit Connections Project, for which we're conducting field assessments to evaluate how easily riders can transfer between services to identify the improvements that will strengthen connections across the region. So through these collaborative partnerships, we're working towards creating a robust transportation system that are meeting the needs of a variety of needs in the region and also now and in the future. So shifting into the second space I wanted to touch on that the MPO is also uniquely positioned to thrive in, and that's in the access to the application of and even the creation of robust data sets and tools that we use to support a data-driven decision-making process. Whether we are repackaging data into interactive databases and making them available to the public, or whether we're proactively assessing the data and tools we have at our disposal to understand and explore complex transportation problems, we are always guided by our recently established data vision, which is centered on transparency, collaboration, and resilience. It is in that framework that we continue to evolve our unique role in this state as the developer and the steward of the regional and the statewide travel demand model that provides projections of year 2050 conditions of land use, travel behavior, roadway projects, and transit service. The travel demand model is used to support research, policy development, and design decision-making by exploring potential travel behavior impacts of those decisions. So back in 2024, we developed and released to the public an updated, well-documented travel demand model called TDM23, which enabled us in 2025 to enhance our relationships with the members of the model user community, dozens of whom are now leveraging TDM23 for their own transportation planning, policy, and design questions. That is completely different from how we were carrying out our practice before, and we are really celebrating building out those relationships and collaborative partnerships. We are also preparing for engaging in a model support contract that will provide training and support to our model development teams so that we can build the next generation of these travel demand modeling tools to inform the update for the next long-range plan. And in 2025, we also expanded our suite of modeling tools. We developed a regional transit ridership model using the Federal Transit Administration's STOPS platform. This tool allows for more efficient and deeper exploration into how changes in transit service, like additional bus service or train service, impacts how people might choose to travel. And what this also does is the information from this model sets up our transit partners well to pursue capital investment grants. And then we are also leading the industry in our experimentation with exploratory modeling, which is a new way of defining and analyzing scenarios to provide even more insights from our modeling tools. We have also led the field in creating new data sets. In 2025, we leveraged a state discretionary grant to create fine-grained data sets, new fine-grained data sets that help identify where people walking, biking, and using mobility-assisted devices are most at risk of extreme heat. In partnership with Georgia Tech, Walk Mass, Mass Bike, Bike to the Sea, Mystic River Watershed Association, and municipal leaders, we successfully completed phase 1 of our No Heat project, which identifies risk locations and mitigation strategies to offset the effects of increasing extreme heat in our region, particularly for those who are vulnerable to the highest exposure. We're going to be piloting mitigation strategies as quick build projects for phase 2 of this project in the coming spring in close collaboration with our municipal partners. So these examples show how we're continuing to position ourselves as a critical resource in the region and evaluating different policies and understanding trade-offs, and also to engaging stakeholders in the potential impacts of the MPO's decisions. And then finally, I would like to move from our planning and collaboration into implementation and action. So echoing some of Lizzie's points earlier, our goal at the MPO is also to align our investments in planning analysis with the effective investments that we make in capital projects. So in our case, action and implementation can look like a few different things. It can look like quick build and pilot projects. It can look like purchasing vehicles and equipment like buses and blue bike stations and bike counters. And it can also look like the investment in the full reconstruction of roadways, all of which we do through our rolling capital investment program known as the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. Part of our success in ensuring that our planning is actionable, meaning having clear steps to implementation, is that in 2025, we released the first regional Vision Zero action plan. Thank you to those of you who brought that up. It is a massive success, and really action is the key word of the title of the plan. It's comprehensive, but it has distinct, measurable, and actionable steps ranging from data gathering and policy interventions to on-the-ground quick build and long-term infrastructure changes that we can work with you all to engage in implementing. The development of a truly actionable plan was made possible by engaging a task force of 18 representatives. Again, that collaboration from state and municipal agencies, advocacy and community-based organizations, and members of the public. And again, we are all able to unite around this goal of shared streets, which leads to a really amazing outcome and plan that we can implement together. And in the coming year, we are planning to leverage a second already awarded Safe Streets and Roads for All discretionary grant to pilot quick build traffic calming projects paired with outreach and education so that we can test how different strategies perform in urban and suburban settings. And then as my final example, this year we've employed new strategies to improve the pipeline of ready to construct MPO prioritized transportation projects. So I know this has been a recurring theme, but we know and we recognize that local proponents often lack the resources and the capacity to advance regionally and even locally significant projects from the concept stage to the design stage that can then be built. So at federal fiscal year 2025, as again, thank you, somebody else called out, Mayor Ballantyne, I believe, we piloted funding project design for municipalities using a portion of the available capital funding for TIP projects, and then moving that into working on design so that we can more effectively move projects through the project development process. There was an immediate enthusiastic response. We had 15 different municipalities applying for the first round of funding, and we were able to fund 6 of those projects, one of which spanned 3 municipalities. In the second year, we programmed 7 projects to receive design funding, and that helped, again, make them eligible for further advancement in the TIP. Sorry. So we know, and we're doing this because well-designed and coordinated projects are better set up for success in advancing through the MassDOT development process and in meeting the design milestones that we all know are realistic to get to year 1 of construction. And in fact, as has been mentioned, this board boldly voted to establish those milestones transparently last week. And these efforts together in transparency and financial support, paired with our early investment in technical assistance and MassDOT's expanded municipal coordination strategies, which you're going to be hearing about more after the break in our panel, all of this together is contributing to getting projects built. I think that's a common theme that we're all agreeing on at the table today. And it's helping us build them in a way that's moving the needle and meeting regional goals. So those highlights are just a few of the examples of really the exemplary efforts that this board, the 60 or so staff, many of whom are here with me in this room today, and our regional stakeholders have been able to accomplish together. And really what we're doing, bring it back to the beginning, is advancing a regional vision for transportation system that's safe, that's robust, reliable, that serves everyone, and that also advances economic vibrancy and quality of life for the residents of our region. So in celebrating FFY25 successes, I've tried to weave in some hints and examples of where we're going in 2026. And it started October 1st, and it's already brought with it new opportunities to partner, to proactively ready ourselves to tackle complex transportation challenges, and to do so all in service of a stable pipeline of constructible projects. So as I alluded to just after the break, you're going to be hearing from a panel of really excellent colleagues who've learned from past challenges that interagency, intergovernmental collaboration and cooperation is really essential to ensuring that these projects are advanced and built to the benefit of our region. Again, that is why we are all here together to do this work. And I am looking forward to hearing from them, and then beyond that, a productive rest of this federal fiscal year 2026 with you all. So thank you so much yet again for the work that you do.
Thank you, Tegan. Excellent work as always. It is now time for a break, and we're going to take 10-minute break, an actual 10-minute break, because we need to rearrange some of the chairs for our panel discussion. So everybody's got 10 minutes free. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. We're now going to transition into a panel discussion from partnerships to action. And I am going to turn it over to the moderator, which is Elena Ion, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elena Ion. I am the manager of MPO Planning and Policy, and I am here with a group of panelists.
It's a little closer.
Thank you. We're excited to be here with a group of colleagues and experts who represent multiple levels of government, but they can also speak to all phases of project development, importantly. This is going to be the focus of our conversation today. And this is a continuation of a theme that was addressed last year by Jonathan Gulliver in his role of highway administrator, this idea that the MassDOT is working to strengthen project delivery. And this, again, this will be the focus of our panel today, along with the idea that was mentioned this year, which is accelerating project delivery. Before the break, you've heard Tegan walk us through the process that the MPO is going through to strengthen the project pipeline and to improve readiness. And our panelists have been involved with that work along the way for multiple years. And I want to say today we will be addressing several topics, several key themes that speak to this idea of project delivery. One of the themes is early engagement. This is getting at new approaches that are reshaping how projects get off the ground, how we deliver projects faster. And early coordination is among agencies, I think, is one of the key ways in which the MPO is and other agencies are reducing risk, but also importantly, putting some predictability in the process. Another important topic that we'll address today and we'll keep coming back to is this idea of readiness as a shared responsibility. We across agencies are collaborating so that municipalities don't have to navigate the process of meeting milestones, readiness milestones alone. So again, the theme of the panel today is also interagency coordination and collaboration to guide municipalities through these milestones of the readiness process. And lastly, what we want to address today, and again, a topic that we'll keep coming back to, is the MPO's role, evolving role as a convener. We want to know how we can be more useful in the process, how can you use us more, and how can we become conveners that bring together municipalities and other agencies to increase transparency and support local priority projects. So I would like to introduce our panelists now. So on the MassDOT side, we have Michael Trepanian, Manager of Modernization Programs at MassDOT's Highway Division. Representing the municipal perspective is Brad Rawson. He is the Director of Mobility at the City of Somerville. And then on the MBTA side, we have Laura Gilmore. She is the Senior Director of Strategic Transit Planning at the MBTA. And as I said, they bring state, they bring municipal perspectives, transit perspectives to this process, and a wealth of experience navigating the project delivery process. So we want to start out by asking all of you to reflect from your vantage point on what is moving the needle in project delivery and coordination with other agencies. And I'm going to start with you, Michael.
Okay. Great.
So, many municipalities are facing many barriers in meeting readiness milestones, in getting projects up to standards for getting on the tip. And we know that you've started a team that addresses that and seeks to support municipalities. So if you could tell us a little bit more of how your team is supporting this process and what new processes you're bringing in place.
Sure. Thanks, Elena. And thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm honored to be here. Speaking of vantage points, Never thought that I'd have this vantage point in this room. So thank you, David, for thank you, David, for allowing me to warm the seat for a few moments. Yeah, so hi, everybody. I'm Michael. I've been with MassDOT and Mass Highway, I suppose, for 18 years, and I've had a lot of experience kind of watching projects develop from the sidelines, working to support them in a role in our environmental section, and then leading a number of our key projects and key programs as we've transitioned over the years from responding to the projects that folks ask us to get ready to prioritizing projects that we want to see ready that meet our stated policy goals and sort of long range desired outcomes. So I'll talk a little more later about what this means in terms of program management and what the team is doing. But the biggest opportunities we're seeing in terms of getting projects in the pipeline is building capacity in that area that bridges the planning phase, the visioning phase for whether it's a community doing master planning work for economic development and land use and the intersection with transportation to corridor planning and understanding multimodal needs and travel demand, and providing a bridge in what has been classically a pretty big gap between a planning process to say this is a vision to how do we get the nuts and bolts of design done and put a project on the street for delivery. So in a big way, that's what our team is serving, both for our agency working with other partner agencies and municipalities to maximize our ability to bridge that gap. Prioritizing those needs against our funding constraints, and then also making sure we're looking at what is the right size fit for a need. Traditionally, we've always said, well, we have a problem here. Let's throw a big capital project at it. And MassDOT's review processes generally sort of always resulted in that one size fits all approach, whether it's trying to fix a hotspot congestion bottleneck problem or a high crash location or a gap in multimodal network connectivity. We generally always say we're going to put you in a 5-year track or longer, and which of course we're trying to improve. But now we are leveraging what we're calling targeted modernization strategies that allow us to address those really urgent needs that if we could just build this thing instead of having to address all these problems all at once, we could really move the needle incrementally. In addition to doing things like piloting conditions that don't require 5 to 10 years to convince a community about a transformative change, but get them those changes incrementally and build that buy-in at the community level and stakeholder level to make those incremental improvements.
Thank you, Michael. And what you're describing aligns very well with how the MPO is seeing this interagency coordination and collaboration process. And as a follow-up, I'm wondering, how do you envision the MPO's role or the MPO taking a more active role in this early project development process?
Oh, well, I was going to spare a little bit of this for the next question, but
we can do that.
Well, I'll plant the seed and then we can come back after it's had a chance to grow for a moment in the audience's mind. Is that a lot of what we're doing on the statewide program management in terms of utilizing a more active management strategy is identifying needs, prioritizing where those needs are, and scoping how to address them, and then programming them in the 5-year timeline for, putting out to delivery in that foreseeable future, and then also building out a long-range pipeline for those things that require a longer look. In a very similar way, our work has been modeled after the model of an MPO, and being able to take community-based, regional-based, and sort of, in our case, statewide-based needs and prioritize those in our assets network, or our network of assets to drive where those investments go. I think very much the same way this board and this larger community of stakeholders and community members does the same thing, and we've really been learning lessons from the MPO model to translate those to the statewide model as well. So I think the places where we're going to continue to, we'll talk more about today, but we want to continue to collaborate is where do those shared goals really overlap, and beyond just the funding resources and some of the things Tegan talked to. Kind of shout out to some of the awesome work that you guys are doing here at the staff. Where can we work together on building more data-rich tools to inform decision making and better uplift our story around positive outcomes and improvement.
Thank you, Michael.
Sorry, guys.
I don't, we're sharing this microphone, I think. But moving on to Brad, I'm wondering what this process looks like from the municipal side. Somerville is seen as a model for championing local priorities, but also thinking regionally. So Brad, how do you bring these local priorities and these regional conversations, and vice versa? How do you align these local priorities with MPO's regional objectives, for example?
Thanks, Elena, and thanks everybody who's working so hard to create these spaces for regional collaboration. This MPO is growing right before our very eyes, and it's a moment of urgent need for that growth because we are facing so many disruptive challenges. My name is Brad Ross, and I serve the City of Somerville as Director of Mobility in Mayor Ballantyne's office. I have been serving in the City of Somerville for 18 years, but interestingly, to start to answer your question, Elena, I started my career at a regional council of governments in northwestern Vermont long ago, not unlike MAPC. So the idea of municipalities working together despite differences in land use, economy, political leadership is as natural as breathing for me in 25 years of public service. And it really applies here in this space uniquely among all of the places that I have been working and serving since 2007. So municipalities typically are super under-resourced. We are on the ground and accountable to our residents, our business community, our non-governmental organizations, and grassroots activists. And what is one of the most common things that anybody hears from their local government? Can't do it, don't have time, don't have the staff, don't have the money, don't have the jurisdiction, don't have the authorization. So from our perspective in Somerville, we have tried to turn that narrative on its head. We have tried to learn about the standard operating procedures, the best practices in management from our big sisters and brothers in state agencies. Mass DOT and MBTA have been growing before our very eyes, have been bringing data-driven, responsive community context into capital planning and policy development. And I learned this long ago from mentors like Tom Bent, who serves as our intercore prime rep, and I'm the alternate, right? Tom has always said to us, we have two jobs in Somerville. Our job is to serve our 80,000 residents, to get projects and programs and policies administered that improve quality of life and outcomes in our city. But our job is also to connect to a larger regional ecosystem because we are 4 square miles. Folks, we know this: stormwater, affordable housing, traffic congestion, safety and reliability in our transit systems. These things are agnostic to municipal boundaries. But we also all know that metropolitan Boston has a typical and normal history of parochialism, of people fighting for the scraps just within their little boundaries. And in 2007, when I arrived, Somerville was kind of doing that. We were in a transition moment, starting to pick our heads up and realize we were part of a bigger network. And so Tom and I and our partners and our predecessors, we have always really emphasized a couple things: understanding the ways that our state agency partners make decisions, the realistic timelines that they operate under. And then we view our role as demystifying those processes for our residents, for our staff, and our interdepartmental partners who aren't in rooms like this. So the people stop throwing rocks at state agencies and start extending the hand of partnership. That's how we get outcomes at the local level. And when we tell stories like that, that's how we set up the next communities to learn from our story so that they can have a shorter learning curve and deliver outcomes that matter for their communities.
Thank you, Brad, for those points. We'll move to Laura next. Laura, from the MBTA perspective, how are you working to bring projects earlier into the MPO's process and align them both with regional goals, but also with program priorities at the MBTA, such as mobility integration, for example?
Sure. And hi, everyone. Brad, Wow, what a lot to follow there. It's great. That's the great thing about being on this panel with you both. So my name is Laura Gilmore. I'm Senior Director of Strategic Transit Planning at the T, and my team is a small but mighty group within the T that's focused on longer range planning, strategic planning, helping out with some large scale regional projects, and then regional engagement with stakeholders like the MPO. Our focus really has been on, we see the importance of the MPO as a forum for partnership. And we know that the T is complex and the T crosses many municipal boundaries. And we need to make sure that we are making decisions that are aligned both to our priorities and to all of yours. And so we also know that, the T has 6 different modes that we operate, and we have 7,000 something employees. So, the part of the work that my team has been doing to be able to break down silos and better work with our municipal partners is just being a point of contact so that you know who to go to. And I really want to highlight Sandy Johnston, who is here raising his hand, who will be at the table, is the face who you see most frequently at the MPO and really has taken on that role to make sure that our municipal partners just know, even if our team is not the right contact for a particular issue, that you can reach someone who will help you track down through the complexity of a large organization who the right people to work with are. But I also I know that we're talking about project delivery here, and you heard from our general manager / interim secretary earlier about some of the innovative approaches that he is bringing to his work in Massachusetts from his past experience. I think you all, as riders of the MBTA system, are probably seeing the results of that day to day. Not MPO funded specifically, but I will highlight, the great success that the T has had in the last couple of years with our track improvement program, making sure that we are getting those safety and state of good repair improvements done to make sure that our system works for our riders. That's the sort of innovation that we are focused on, as well as some of the smaller projects that we are working with many of our municipal partners on. And we've heard from members of the MPO that they really want to understand what the T's priorities are, and that you all would like the T to come earlier with projects, with ideas, to come to the table and think about partnerships. And so there's a couple different ways that we've been thinking about how to do that, Elena. So first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't note that my team did not exist 4 years ago. So we built a small planning shop within the T to make sure that we had the resources to think longer term about the future of the system. We developed a strategic plan and a set of service priorities, what we call full T ahead, which is saying, where are we trying to head as an organization? And that, is just, it gives us a roadmap of both the projects and programs that we are going to be working towards. And then also by creating that small planning shop in-house, we've been able to engage we're in the same group as our capital planning team. So you get the 5-year CIP, but then we're helping to think, much longer term than that. So we're building that pipeline that then our CIP is drawn from. We're working on plans with various teams internally to think about different aspects of our work. What should the future of our different modes look like? Right now we're working with our colleagues at MassDOT on a study of the water transportation network to see what that should look like. We just finished a climate study that laid out all of the investments that we should make for the climate and resilience of our system. Tegan highlighted earlier that we released a mobility integrations plan that I think you'll hear a lot about thinking about the connectivity between our system and some of our partners like the RTAs. That planning is enabling us to bring better projects and to have that pipeline of projects. And then what we've been working on is just being able to bring those projects earlier, making sure that we have have some alternatives that we can share, that we can bring lists of projects and ideas that have a regional balance because our system is so diverse, and that we're thinking about how we can package different improvements. So we're thinking about, sets of smaller projects that might not make sense to federalize if we did, an individual project, things like bus stop improvements, or we got some funding from the MPO a few years ago that's enabling us to upgrade all of our pedal and park stations. So being able to package those projects in new ways and then just bring the package of projects earlier to be able to have a more robust evaluation and conversation about what the priorities are across the region.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you all for your points. I think across your responses, one theme emerges and is recurrent is this idea of allocating not only staff time, but also resources and early coordination to this process. And I think how well we coordinate really influences whether or not we can bring a project from concept to delivery. I think for our next question, I want to continue this thread of the importance of working regionally. So we would like for you to reflect on how we can better work at the regional level, how can we work across jurisdictional boundaries, again, all in service of accelerating project delivery.
Well, before we get into some more specific examples, I think Brad actually already said it really well, that, it's critical that we're working at a regional scale. Brad, I don't think I can say it as well as you did, but, transportation is a network. Our transportation systems don't end at municipal boundaries. They don't even end at the MPO boundaries. Or the state boundaries. They're about helping people move across those jurisdictional boundaries. And our users aren't thinking about those boundaries when they're using the systems. So, this is where a lot of the work that the T has been doing around mobility integrations is so important, because what we've been highlighting is that our infrastructure is a network, that there are connections both amongst the systems that we operate that we can try to improve, but also that all of our stations are points of connection to other services. They connect to the regional transportation authorities, they connect to the TMAs, they connect to, they're an opportunity for folks to park and get on transit, people to walk up, to bike up. And so trying to think about those connections and more opportunities for us to work together across those jurisdictional boundaries is just really critically how we will do the work.
Laura, those are great points, and a couple examples that I'd love to lift up from the municipal standpoint. And, with all apologies to all of our other sub-regional neighbors, these couple examples are pretty close to home in Somerville, but I think that they are transferable across different modes of travel, different sub-regions of the region. So everybody has read the newspapers. Hopefully you've all ridden the Green Line extension, which is a miracle of modern engineering, a miracle of interagency coordination and of stick-to-itiveness that this Commonwealth, this region, and the cities, not limited to Cambridge, Somerville, Medford, really delivered. I ride the Green Line all the time, and I never have anything other than an ear-to-ear grin, because I'm looking around and I'm saying we transformed tens of thousands of lives every day by doing what the odds were against, right, and actually delivering this thing. One of the reasons that the Green Line finally got delivered after so many years of fits and starts, progress and drawback, was the cities of Cambridge, Somerville, and Medford working as a coordinated unit. This starts with our mayors and our staff, but it also is reflected in our grassroots advocates, our business community. Hundreds and hundreds of residents would come out to come to meetings, write letter campaigns. We had a series of state delegation members. Interim Secretary Eng discussed this earlier, the importance of our legislative partnerships. Everybody was playing off the same sheet of music. The Green Line could have been canceled many, many times. It was in big trouble in 2016, and we all came together in part because of municipal commitments. One thing I actually really want to spotlight on this example, who was also part of that coalition and did not have direct MBTA service from the Green Line extension? The town of Arlington. Arlington was showing up. The town manager and the staff were in our strategy meetings with Medford Mayor, Somerville Mayor, Cambridge City Manager, with the activist community, because Arlington folks recognized that providing more travel solutions to more people nearby but outside of their borders improved their economy, their quality of life, their environmental sustainability. A more recent example that I'd love to spotlight, many of you who have been serving on this MPO board for many years will remember some of the cash flow challenges that have been very, very tricky for us to navigate, where we often are unable to get projects on the tip advertised in near-term years, and we often have a cash surplus. Our state agency partners have done a good job of stepping up to the plate to help us disperse funding consistent with regional priorities when municipal projects are not ready. Several years ago, our Mass DOT highway partners proposed an important state of good repair project for bridges in the Sullivan Square area, straddling the Somerville-Boston border. They call them the Mystic Mafia bridges. And folks on the city of Boston side and the city of Somerville side looked at each other around this horseshoe and said, we hear you, Mass DOT. These are structurally deficient bridges. We hear you, MBTA. You are getting a track improvement program together, and time is of the essence to get these bridge and rail investments coordinated at the same time. But there was an important lesson learned here. The city of Somerville and the city of Boston had made Vision Zero commitments like those were described by Brian Kane earlier today. And we asked our state agency partners, we said, are we going to rebuild the bridges the way they are today? Or are we going to rebuild them consistent with our adopted policies that improve pedestrian safety, ADA accessibility, and transit priority? And at the time, the answer was no. And many of you will remember that we in Somerville said, we think that this MPO needs to be able to demonstrate a through line between its adopted policies, Mass DOT and MBTA adopted policies, and integrate them into a big $45 million bridge replacement project. We got there. That project is nearly completed, and it includes all of the multimodal benefits that the city of Boston and the city of Somerville advocated for and supported and rolled up our sleeves with our state agency partners on. But folks, the next time that this happens, we need to automate these processes. We need to front load the standards and development, the planning and the vision, the design, the financing that Laura and Michael have described, that Jonathan and Phil talked about in their remarks, that Tegan and the two mayors talked about in their remarks, because this is the only way we achieve scalable solutions. You can't custom design every interagency process. You've got to have a formula that people can point to and say, these are the rules of the road. Here's how we plan ahead of time, so we're not rescoping. Okay, thanks.
I guess I'll offer maybe a simpler. That is an incredible story, Brad, and what we're achieving with Mystic Mafia is so more than just a bridge replacement project. So I applaud all the players in that project's development to make sure that it was more than just the sum of its parts. Thinking regionally and maybe interregionally, I'm reminded of a lot of the work that we do on the Mass Trails team, and driven a lot by municipal proponents, by our partners at TCR, by the grant program that we stood up as a team to support local proponents and their grassroots organizations that are acting as champions for the painstaking mile by mile development of every mile of off-road trail, and in some cases on road where we can support it. These are systems that are well beyond regional boundaries, and now, thankfully, we're seeing expand beyond state boundaries as well, into all well, maybe not upstate New York, but into all of our other neighboring states, where we're seeing these inter-regional, long-distance off-road trail facilities not just be the mile-long community trail that, frankly, I enjoy one of those myself, but now we've weaved together this vision for what this system could be, leveraging both its transportation, public health, recreational, and the economic development benefits that the list goes really, really far and long. And I'd say I would offer a huge kudos to the MPO board for supporting some of the more challenging projects in that portfolio, and furthering the vision of things like the Mass Central Rail Trail. Obviously, the Green Line extension had its own piece of that. Some folks may not know this, but the Community Path extension is the first mile of the Mass Central Rail Trail that many folks on the Trails team want to see extended all the way out to Williamsburg. And we're making that vision a reality, and it's happening because of this huge interregional interdisciplinary, multi-layer collaboration that's happening with big, major national players like the East Coast Greenway to coalitions that have formed around places like the border to Boston or the Mass Central. And we're really leveraging that. Some of the things I'll talk about some more later is just how we're actually seeing those things get into from that planning vision alignment to reality, and the tools that we're building to support that procedurally.
Yeah, thank you for those points and for highlighting how important it is to put processes in place and how critical this cultural shift within the agencies is in collaborating better to deliver projects is. But I'm also wondering, as a follow-up to that, we love it when we all get along and we have shared goals. But speaking of putting processes in place, how should we approach instances when goals do not align? We do represent different stakeholders in the region. So how would you approach that? And if you have examples, even better.
I'm not going to speak to a specific project example, but I think this question really speaks to the importance of both having those goals and being able to articulate what they are to each other so that we know that in advance and we know where we are aligned and where we aren't. But also just to the ongoing communication and coordination that we do. I think the ongoing partnership and the work to maintain relationship and to build trust before there are any sort of challenges that we have to face is really critical to our ability to then dive in when those issues come up and be able to understand that there are going to be times where there is tension. There are going to be times where our goals are not aligned. But if we know each other and we know, the partnerships that we have on other things, we can better work through it. I mean, one thing that I will highlight where I think the T has really done something incredible on this front is we, in the last couple of years, have started a program where we've been encouraging many of our managers to take an internal training that's focused on adaptive leadership. So helping our leaders throughout the agency better engage when challenges come up, both internally in our own organization and in our work with partners. And a lot of that work has been focused on understanding when there are technical solutions, quick fixes that you can make versus when there are adaptive challenges, things that are more structural or where there are just challenges that are going to take more work to get through. And I think that's been a really powerful framework for us to have that language to use around the different types of challenges that come up, and it's given us a different way to think about those challenges. So if Michael and I were in a meeting and we're on different sides of the table, it's not an interpersonal conflict, but we can understand and we can look at each other, and what I would try to do in that situation and what these trainings have helped me to learn is, looking from a more neutral perspective and understanding where our organizational goals may not be aligned, and then being able to figure out the path forward from that more neutral perspective.
We're not gonna fight on screen anyway, right, Laura? Take it offline.
The point is, it's not a fight.
No, of course. If I could, I think this is maybe where it makes sense to talk through. I'm not going to ask you all to raise your hands, but how many times have you disagreed with MassDOT in your project development process? I think what we recognize is the value of building consensus as early as possible, and if we're unable to, figuring out how to find maybe an alternative path for reaching success in meeting the need that any individual project is trying to meet. And towards that end, that's been sort of the backbone backbone of the development of our so-called program management team, and we generally shorthand call ourselves the modernization team. We've added a number of staff, so similar to Laura's story earlier, we're a new operational function in Highway Division. A number of my team members are here if you guys want to raise your hand here in the audience, and I think online as well. So we're a team of 10 plus 2 seasonal folks that we hire season after season to support the development of all of our statewide programs, and now more recently developing support mechanisms for municipalities that are trying to access MassDOT's TIP process as well, and add capacity to support our MPOs as they're have this ongoing review of readiness and project evaluation. So what that really looks like and is really three parts. We recognize that every square inch of our transportation system has some kind of need, right? There's billions of dollars of need across the Commonwealth. How do we prioritize those to best leverage the most needy places? Those places where our policies say we should be investing equitably in environmental justice communities, in places where we have been underinvested or we have the most vulnerable populations. So prioritizing those needs and scoping the right project. And this is a word I hadn't said out loud yet, but we've really gotten good, I think, and we're getting better every day at scoping our projects and creating a process with transparency and collaboration with the MBTA, with our host municipalities, whether it's on state highway or your jurisdiction, with our regional planning agency staff, opening the doors to a bigger tent. So that everybody understands what those challenges are. I think when we talk about disagreements and process, how many times have we told you at MassDOT that if you want to access TIP funds, you have to make hard choices about your roadways cross section. And a lot of times in community centers, suburban villages, urban neighborhoods, we're making that trade-off of parking versus bike lanes, of pedestrian plaza versus capacity for cars. Our processes now help illuminate where those challenges are going to be and build consensus on that before investing years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in design. And then when we do have a successful early project development phase, then working together with both the MPO and in our own statewide discretionary sort of ecosystem to get the right projects in the right years at that right scale, so that our review processes aren't blowing things up just because process takes control rather than proponents being in the driver's seat and making decisions collaboratively with us at MassDOT as a sort of integrated team rather than sort of the say-so that has maybe felt like for many proponents been the case for many years.
Lane, is it okay if I jump on that thread real quick and just offer a quick commercial to everybody? Folks, if you have been closely involved in MPO work these last couple of years, you will remember these tensions about scope control, about when critical decisions are made and when project proponents at both the municipal and the state agency level are interested in essentially rescoping. The fact that it adds risk, that it adds cost, and that projects slip in our TIP, and it perpetuates this real structural challenge we're all working through. Laura and Michael and their respective teams and all of the other teams that interface with them are the antidote. They are the solution. They are working on best practices and publishing them. And I want to offer a quick commercial for any of you who haven't kind of nerded out and looked at MassDOT's incredible Moving Together conference that they host every year for a couple thousand folks in the advocacy space and the professional spaces. Both Laura's team and Michael's team did presentations that I was reading earlier this week, and they are so rigorous in their definition of risk drivers for project development. And a lot of it comes down to those clear earlier conversations, interagency, MBTA and MassDOT, MassDOT and DCR, MassDOT and municipality. What kind of intersection do we want to build? What kind of street are we committed to? And are we, who are closest to the political processes in our community, willing to make a decision and stick with it? That is how we control risk. Check out their presentations at Moving Together.
He did it to me too. Thanks, Brad. Great pitch. And thanks to Doug Johnson on my team who gave that presentation at the mega session at Moving Together. Awesome presentation. I think really does dive into a lot more of the details of what I'm trying to describe. So thanks, Brad.
Thank you all for these points, and it's really nice to see everyone articulate ways in which we could do better. Too often, transportation planners, when they convene, they talk about what doesn't work, what the barriers are, but today was a little bit different. We focused on what works, we focused on results and paths forward. I would like to open it up to the board for questions now. And I think we have about 15 minutes for that. So if there are any questions from the board.
Don't all speak up at once.
They're just odd.
We could jump in with a follow-up, maybe a segue question.
Wow. You're all just really shocked and awed, right?
Michael, earlier you said that Mass DOT was learning from the MPO process. I actually want to kind of turn that compliment on its head, and we've said this in recent board meetings. This MPO is learning from excellence in the Mass DOT process. We have talked about setting up a TIP committee. We have talked about establishing readiness guidelines that mirror the Mass DOT project development books. Laura mentioned how her team has been working with others in the MBTA to define design guidelines and standards so that municipalities, consultants, and others can point to a bus stop treatment, for example, an intersection treatment, and say, do that. This MPO is now adopting that into our formal operating plan and the way that we govern our $100 to $150 million of capital resource allocation every year. So it really is this virtuous cycle. Innovation with our state agency partners gets picked up and mirrored by the MPO, and then innovation at the MPO gets picked up and mirrored by municipalities and by state agencies. This is the virtuous cycle that we find ourselves in 2025.
That is a great point, Brad. And, you know, the larger question we wanted to ask you is, where do you see the next steps? Where do you see that there are still gaps or opportunities? And I am wondering if that's maybe one area where this area of alignment of milestones of readiness criteria might be that.
I can go if you'd like.
Yeah, I guess just before you address that, I just want to say one thing just to Brad's point about the innovation. And I think a couple times in this, in the conversation today, we've highlighted where this MPO has taken some risk and done some innovative new things. And I really just want to call that out. One that I haven't heard mentioned yet, but I just do want to highlight it is that this year, there were operating funds available for projects too. So for the T, we started a pilot of changes to a service using operating funds. I think it's important to highlight where this MPO is willing to take some risk to put in place some new programs, and also the fact that all of us then are having to work with the MPO to test new things, which sometimes is hard. Sometimes it's a little bumpy when you have to try something new, learn the new processes, figure out the new paperwork behind the scenes. But I think those experiments are really important, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next in that realm. Elena, that was a little bit of a sidestep from the specific question about like, where do we want to head next? But I do think that theme of innovation is really important.
Great.
Can I build on Laura's point? So Laura, I'm so glad you brought up the connection between design, project delivery, and operations and maintenance. We heard Interim Secretary Eng, we heard Undersecretary Gulliver describe how Mass DOT is scaling up capital investment. But any of you who were here in this room 1 year ago for our annual meeting may remember Administrator Gulliver talking about operations funding. Just because we build new streets, bridges, culverts, intersections, doesn't mean that we can take care of them. And I think it's really important to take advantage of a great room of change agents and municipal and statewide and advocacy leaders to say, as we continue to work with our partners in the legislature to provide more sustainable funding sources through the Chapter 90 program that Administrator Gulliver mentioned, et cetera, let's also go to bat for our Mass DOT district partners. If they can't manage pavement, if they can't fight snow, what hope do we have that we can deliver complete streets solutions that provide 12 months a year of benefit in our New England climate. If they don't have the people to take care of things in the middle of the night when something goes wrong, then they will always, always be in a reactive rather than a proactive posture. We need to support our operations partners. At the local level in Somerville, I've been really proud that this has been part of my journey, is making sure that as my team is the point for complete streets interventions in our city, we are always remembering that our local fire department and our local Department of Public Works and our local parking enforcement office are asked to take on new work streams that require new headcounts, new technology, new software, new SOPs to take care of more complex streets than we had a generation ago. The same thing is happening at Mass DOT. And it's not quite getting the airtime yet that capital plan reform has gotten. MBTA has gotten the airtime, thank goodness. The only reason that we're delivering more frequent bus service because MBTA has named this issue and worked really hard to build a pipeline of workforce development. Credit to all the people at MBTA who have been doing that. I'm not yet seeing discussions and dialogue about that on the Mass DOT and Mass Highway side of the house. So I would like to leave folks with that little provocative statement.
It does in the meetings I'm in, Brad. So, look, I appreciate that very much, Brad, and I think I can't appreciate it nearly as much as my district counterparts. We in headquarters have the privilege of proposing these really transformative, incredible projects without having the responsibility of the phone call that is complaining about them. I mean, you've worked with our district partners enough to know that a lot of that responsibility is borne at that more regional district level, and we are shouldering a larger set of assets, and given I've talked about this already, given the overwhelming need for modernization and just simply asset management. When we start layering on additional assets in the form of separated bike lanes, in the form of side paths, in the form of just more sidewalk inventory and curb ramps to keep compliant, we are burdening ourselves with more and more maintenance, which of course, other agency partners know better than I, how that can really add up. So it is something we take into account when we're having discussions around design treatment, around the devil in the details around this drainage feature versus that. How do you keep this into a sustainable feature? And it's something that absolutely, for those of you who sit in over the comment resolution meeting in a MassDOT project development process, knows is on the forefront of a lot of folks' minds that aren't represented in this room today.
Two things that I'll highlight in terms of what we want to do next. So I feel like I've said a couple times here that one of the focuses of my team at the T is working on our regional collaborations, particularly with our public sector partners. So we want to continue to build that, work with you all, work with the RTAs and RPAs. We are now more regularly engaging in those spaces, and we want to continue to build that, continue to implement that mobility integrations work, thinking about the connections between our systems and other systems across our service area. But the other thing that I just want to note before we wrap up is that I mentioned that we have done a fair amount of planning and a fair amount of thinking about our how our long-term goals impact our shorter-term capital plans in the last couple of years. And I just want to note that that work is going to continue, and that work is going to also be playing out at the MPO level. I know that CTPS staff are going to be starting to work on their long-range transportation plan. That's something that I know we all will be collaborating on. And that will encourage some new conversations with the MPO about funding priorities. Similarly, at the T, we are really excited next year to be kicking off our program for mass transportation, which is our long-range capital plan. The intention there is to continue a lot of the conversations we've been having today. It's going to involve robust public engagement, but we really want the public and our agency partners to help us wrestle with the trade-offs, to wrestle with the prioritization, because we know that there are a number of things that we need to do, but there are limited resources. We're in an interesting time funding wise. And so we need to have a really transparent conversation about those trade-offs, about what we do first, and about how what we take on relates to the goals that we set, that my agency sets, that this board sets, and that all of your municipalities set as well.
Well, we are almost at time, and I wanted to thank you, Laura, Michael, Brad, for bringing your expertise to this conversation and your energy and the great points that you made. And we are looking forward to evolving these processes and scaling up these channels of communication that we put in place. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. We're going to take 1 second. Next
You can have your seat back now, David. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Now we'll go back to our meeting agenda. First item on the agenda is the appointment of committee slates. So all the committee slates have been set. I will read them to you so you can know, and then we will take a motion in a second to approve them. The UPWP committee will be made of MassDOT at the chair, City of Boston, City of Newton, Intercore committee represented by City of Somerville, MAPC, the MBTA Advisory Board, Metro West, represented by the City of Framingham, SWAP, represented by the Town of Rentham, TRIC, represented by the Town of Norwood, the Community Advisory Council, and the Town of Arlington. The ANF committee will be chaired by the MBTA Advisory Board and include the City of Boston, MAPC, MassDOT, Metro West, City of Framingham, Community Advisory Council, Town of Arlington, and the North Shore Planning Council, Town of Burlington. The Congestion Management Committee will be chaired by the City of Everett and will be the City of Boston, MassDOT, Massport, MBTA Advisory Board, Town of Arlington, TRIC, and the Community Advisory Council. The TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee will continue to be chaired by the City of Boston and include the Intercore Committee, MAPC, MassDOT, Metro West, the RTAs, represented by MWRTA, Town of Arlington, Town of Brookline, and the Community Advisory Council. Can I get a second? A motion and a second to approve those slates of membership. Please state your name for the record when making the motion. Lizzie?
I'd like to make the motion to
Meg?
accept the slate. My
Thank
name is
you.
Lizzie Wyatt from MAPC.
Jen?
Jen Rose, City of Boston. I will second that motion.
Thank you. Motion having been made and seconded. Dave, please call the roll.
Certainly, David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard.
John Bouchard, yes.
Nice.
Cool.
Thank you.
You were worried if I was there, weren't you?
We're wondering, yes.
Back to his office, I guess.
In the same vein, John Romano,
John had to leave.
Laura Gilmore, or Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston for the MBTA, yes.
You. Jimmy,
Jimny for MWRTA and the RTAs, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Lizzie Wyatt,
Lizzie Wyatt, yes.
Isabella McKinnon,
Isabella McKinnon, yes.
Caitlin, pardon me, Carl Alexander,
Carl Alexander, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nick Gove,
Nick Gove, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
Ned Codd,
Ned Codd, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Chute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Benton, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti, Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Christy Orio,
Cristorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff,
Steve Olenoff, yes.
motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dave. Next item on the agenda is the election of the vice chair. At a previous meeting, we took motions and MAPC was moved as the vice chair. Are there any other motions today? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve MAPC as vice chair for the coming year? Please state your name for the record when making the motion. Tom Bent.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Jen Rowe. Oh,
Jen Rowe,
sorry, Sarah.
second that motion.
Sorry, Sarah. I didn't see you raising your hand. Sarah Lee. Go ahead, Sarah.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Certainly. David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard. Pardon me, John Bouchard.
John Bouchard, yes.
Thank you. Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Lizzie Wyatt,
Lizzie Wyatt, yes.
Isabella McKinnon,
Isabella McKinnon, yes.
Carl Alexander,
Carl Alexander, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nick Gove,
Nick Gove, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
Ned Cod,
Ned Cod, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Chute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Cristorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff,
Steve Olenoff, yes.
motion carries, Chair.
Thank you. I just want to note for the record, that's one of the few times people have ever competed to actually make a motion. It's all down to you guys. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the October 9th, 2025 meeting minutes. Can I get a motion in a second? Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 9th.
Darlene Wynn.
Second that motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing and hearing none, please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, abstain.
Lizzie Wyatt,
Lizzie Wyatt, yes.
Isabella McKinnon,
Isabella McKinnon, yes.
Carl Alexander,
Carl Alexander, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nick Gove,
Nick Gove, abstain.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, abstain.
Ned Cod,
Ned Cod, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Chute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, abstain.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Cristorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, abstain.
and Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Dave. Next item on the agenda is committee chair reports. Are there any? Seeing none. Next item is member items. Do any members have items at this time? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to adjourn? And please state your name for the record when making the motion. Lizzie Wyatt.
Lizzie Wyatt, motion to adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any objections? Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for another successful annual meeting. Thanks a lot, guys. Yes, thank you to staff. Thank you to staff.